Okay, good evening. I'm going to call the regular City of Prescott Council meeting to order. It's Monday, December 12th, a little bit after 6. Roll call, Tom.
Here.
Pat.
Here.
Maureen.
Here.
Bailey.
Here. John
and Dar are excused tonight. So could we all please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. So the next item on the agenda is public comments. The City Council will receive public comments on any issue related to the agenda items. Limited discussion by the City Council may take place. Okay, hearing none. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. The Tourism Committee minutes from November 7th, Library Board minutes October 27th, City Council meeting minutes November 28th, Planning Commission minutes December 5th, November 22 cash balances, November 22 general fund budget comparison, and November 22nd invoice report.
Motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion?
I have a question
Go ahead.
about the Planning Commission meeting minutes. In reading through them on page 2, there's a reference to Ace Hardware's lack of required number of parking spaces, and our mayor, who's since left office, Dave Hubble, mentions ghost platting as an option. I don't have an idea what ghost planning is.
Ghost platting is planning additional parking. Would there be a necessary for it if their parking wasn't going to be enough? However, after looking at their lot and everything, that probably wouldn't be possible. But
Okay.
ghost platting is like planning for the future.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
What is that?
Anything else? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Reports of standing committee, nothing for finance. Planning commission, we've got a concept plan approval for 1003 Campbell Street.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll
Sorry,
take that one.
Matt?
So at last Planning Commission, as was previously discussed, we had the former Churchill property, which is 10003 Campbell Street, come forward with the concept plan for putting in an Ace Hardware. One of the things they are proposing is removing a portion of the rear of the building and adding apologize, I'm trying to get to that spot in the packet, about 4,000 square feet.
Yep.
So as part of our code, right now, it does require 1 square foot per 150, or 1 parking spot per 150 square feet. One of the things that was discussed at the Planning Commission was that we are reviewing our zoning code currently. The 1 spot per 150 square feet does seem very difficult for buildings to meet and retail to meet. Right now, number of our properties in the retail sector are between 50 to 60% of that. The issue that we just wanted to make aware of Planning Commission is that this concept plan would put about 36% of what is required parking for that building with 21 spots. So the Planning Commission reviewed that material and ended up passing it 4-0 and moved it to council for consideration and final approval. So with that, I'll turn it over to council for questions and comments.
Good.
On the chart that you included in the packet, Matt, it looks like there's a lot of places in town that don't meet the requirement, and I just think, I've been in Dollar General's lot, it's never been parked up when I've gone there, so I just wonder how realistic, is that what you're revising it for? Because these are unrealistic standards?
So there's a number of things within our zoning code that we would like to at least review and take a look at. I think the reason it ended up starting to begin with was some of our C2 changes, which this is a C2 zoned district that Ace Hardware's in. So looking at that in terms of parking, looking at that in terms of primary uses and conditional uses and things like that. So.
I took the time to watch the planning commission meeting twice because I wanted to see close up what was being talked about. And I thought that they went through very well every facet of it, of the proposal. And I came to the conclusion that, yeah, I think our ordinance is a little heavy on parking places. And I'm 21 places for that business, I believe, will be sufficient. I do have concerns on Campbell Street, period, and I've had them since before the Quick Trip was approved, because we have a problem up there with that stoplight and backing up of traffic. However, if the owners of the property and the people that are going to be leasing it and running it are comfortable with that number of parking spots, I'm certainly not going to stand in the way of them putting a hardware store in town that we really need.
Yeah.
I have no issue. Make a motion to approve concept plan approval for 1003 Campbell Street.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the concept plan for 1003 Campbell Street. Is there any other discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the meeting report from the Planning Commission. Well, you pretty much heard a lot of what we talked about that took up a great deal of the Planning Commission's time. Like Tom said, they did go through it very well. We had some really good discussion on it. And I'm pleased that with the outcome of the hardware store. I think it is a well-needed asset for our city. That's about all I have. Anything else I'm missing on that, Matt?
We just started the discussion regarding our zoning code review, and we went over 2 items in terms of accessory dwelling units, which we're going to be bringing back to Planning Commission for discussion, and then some regulations as solar-powered units are getting more popular, having regulations regarding if they're standalone units and the difference between that and then attached to buildings. So coming up with some of those proposed language to be added.
Okay. Next meeting for Planning Commission is Tuesday, January 3rd at 6 o'clock. Parks and Public Works, next meeting is Tuesday, January 17th at 6 o'clock. Health and Safety, next meeting is Monday, January 9th at 5. Personnel meeting, February 1st at 5 o'clock. Excuse me. Next item on the agenda is communications and new business. Public comments. The City Council will now receive public comments on any issue not related to the agenda items. Limited discussion by the council may take place. However, no action will be taken on any items. Okay. Next item is a resolution 4322, initial resolution of the City of Prescott, Wisconsin, relating to the issuance of general obligation bonds, the amount to not exceed $4,730,000 for the city's 2023-2024 Street Improvement Program. Sean?
I've got a pre-sale report. Did the council indulge me a second here? I'll hand those around. Or you already have copies?
Yeah.
Yep, looks like everybody. Does anyone need one?
No.
Everybody's good?
I'll take a copy.
You take one?
Thank you.
Anybody else? You got one? Yes. All right. So I'm going to take you through the pre-sale report. Just a little context to it. We've been working with Matt and Beth on the financing plan, both this year and into the future, for the capital improvement plan. Primarily, streets are the largest component of this. And so we talk about this issue, which is related, I think, specifically to Locust, Elm, and Washington Street projects. We're also trying to design this plan with the framework of what's to come down the road for the city of Prescott as well. So as I move through this, feel free to please interrupt me with any questions. So if I can get everyone to go to exhibit number 1, which is the debt repayment schedule, and it's on the second from last page of the pre-sale report. We got from city staff and engineering the budget for the street projects, Locust, Elm, and Washington, and we put together then a preliminary financing for the projects, assuming on the revenue side or source of fund side, we'd need to issue bonding to pay for the project. Plus, it was anticipated that the city's going to use about $400,000 in ARPA funds to pay for a portion of the water utility share of the projects. So in that plan, we put together a 20-year repayment for the bond issue, and that's as long as you can go out for a bond issue under Wisconsin law, issuing general obligation debt for $4,730,000. And then you'll see the columns on the right side of the page. The intention of the city will be, we'll have, and it's, if you have this in color, otherwise it's under the column total P&I. The purple column would represent the total principal and interest payments to repay this debt starting in 2024 through 2043. But the city wouldn't be using your levy to pay 100% of this. The portions of the projects related to water utility, sewer utility, and stormwater improvements, those water in blue, sewer, in the reddish, and storm in the orangish colors, there would be an annual allocation from those utilities to the debt service fund of this issue to pay a portion of it, and then the rest of it, what we call the street portion of it, would be paid by the city's levy each year. Okay, so that's the way we would break it out. The payments are not 100% level because, as I'll show you in a second, we're kind of structuring the debt around the existing indebtedness payments that Prescott has already agreed to for past projects. But roughly speaking, after the first couple of years, it settles in at about $355,000 to $360,000 a year to pay the debt back. And that's based on a projection of interest rates that are about 0.5% above what we're currently seeing in the market. So you'll see the interest rate below in the middle of the page, somewhere around 4.75%. Right now, it's closer to the 4.25, but since we're not going to sell the debt if the plan goes forward if the council approves continuing to move forward, we've got a little bit of cushion in where interest rates may move between now and in January when we would take the competitive proposals on it. Okay. So any questions on this before next couple slides are more about the impact on the city of adding this debt to the existing debt that the city already has Yep, yes, sir.
Do the interest rates on these always, I see on your scale here, they progress up rather than a locked? Is that always the way these work?
So the way when you're selling what would be a securities issue, and by that I mean we put it out to the market and bidders bid on it. The way that it's typically bid is they'll give us an interest rate for each of the maturities. So the 24, 25, 26, they'll give us an interest rate for each one. Generally speaking, we used comparable sales in the market to put this schedule preliminarily together. You'll see that ascending coupon rate where it'll start lower and then go gradually higher. But it doesn't have to be that way. We'll see some bids where the rates actually at the front end are a little higher than the rates at the back end. What we compare when we look at the bidders, though, to try to get a situation where the city of Prescott's paying the lowest cost possible for the debt, is we compare the combination of that interest rate for each maturity that they give us, plus the price they're going to pay us for the bonds. So we set a minimum amount of price that they pay us. They can pay us more than that if they want to, and we often see that. It's called a premium bid. But we put those two factors together to determine who's giving you the best or lowest cost bid. But again, to answer your question specifically, that's typically what we see, but it doesn't have to be that way. They can bid differently than that. Okay. Any other questions on this one? All right, great. So we go over to Exhibit 2. This issue, we are looking at using general obligation debt, which is backed by the full faith and credit of the city, which is basically your ability to levy taxes, to pay it back. Now, general obligation debt, a couple things about it. One, it doesn't count against your levy limit. So when levy limits were put in place back in 2005, the state gave you an exception for general obligation debt. And they did that because if they would have said, this debt is subject to the levy limits too, interest rates would be higher than what you're able to get, because there would have been a limit on how much you could levy to pay the debt back, and it wouldn't be as attractive to purchasers if that limit existed. The other part of GO debt is that it is limited into the amount of principal general obligation debt you can have outstanding, and the limit is 5% of the equalized value of all of Prescott. So the red line you see is the current borrowing capacity for the city right now, which is just above 25 million. And it jumped up quite a bit because you did have a nice increase in your equalized value. Is probably something that Matt and Beth had mentioned to you in the most recent year. And that's that spike up from 2022 to 23. And then the blue bars are representative of the existing debt plus this new issue that's outstanding. So with this new issue will be approximately about 14 million in debt outstanding, with a limit of a little bit more than 25 million in total borrowing capacity. And then the blue bars represent paying back the existing debt, this proposed new issue as well as other issues over time. So you can see over the next few years, and a lot of this has to do with debt related to TID number 5, you're paying that back pretty rapidly. So you can see that that's going to be going down, pretty large payments over the next couple of years, and that debt gradually coming down. Okay. So you're still well within the total limit that you have by the state. And I would say for a growing city, you're very comparable to other communities in terms of your GO borrowing capacity remaining. Okay. Now, the other item, and probably the more important item, is if we add this debt to the existing debt that the city is already committed to pay back, what will be the impact on taxes? So on this Exhibit 3, the blue bars are representative of the existing debt that the city is already committed to levy and to pay back. And the green bars on top of the blue bars are representative of this new issue. And this is the tax levy impact, not the water impact, sewer, or storm. Those are paid by other funds. This is the levy. So in working with city staff, we came up with an approach where our plan is to pay off some of the existing debt that the city has issued with cash that you have, and have accumulated. Couple that prepayment with structuring this new debt to wrap around the existing debt, and we're able to add this new debt in with keeping your total debt levy, existing debt and this new debt, pretty much at the same level. So not really increasing it at all, but being able to finance these new street projects and pay them back. And the other element is we're trying to leave some capacity, because we've done some work, and I don't know if probably staff has shared with you, we've done some projections on future debt issues that would come on down the line, should the council choose to go forward with those, all around a plan of trying to keep that debt levy between now and I think 2028 fairly stable, if we can. The plan on the CIP right now, again, things change, but there was a large project for streets, Kinney, Tower, Campbell, and a large fire truck that are expected down the road, somewhere around 28, I think 29 potentially, that if we do all those, there may have to be an increase at that point, but between now and then, we've been working on a plan to try to keep it basically at that same level each year. Again, existing debt plus this new issue as well. Okay. Last thing, if we can go back before, again, any questions timeline-wise, and this is on page 5 of the report. Tonight was the review of the pre-sale, which I just went through, and then as the mayor read, there's an initial resolution that starts the bonding process under state law. The council has to approve the initial resolution, has to get published. We run a 30-day time period, and then after that, the city can issue the debt. So the idea was to do the initial resolution this evening, discuss the pre-sale report and the finance plan this evening, and then we would come back at your second meeting in January with competitive bids for the bond issue, and at that point we would explain the results of the competitive sale to you. You could look at the results of the sale, and there'd be a second resolution on the 23rd of January that if you're satisfied with the best bid, you would accept that and lock into those interest rates at that point. I may say too, if you lock in, you may ask, well, this is a 20-year bond, can we prepay it if we wanted to? Could we refinance it? The first 8 years, per the way it's being set up right now, the first 8 years of the 20 you could not prepay. But starting in year 8 and later, at your option, if you wanted to, you could prepay or you could refinance and lock into potentially a lower interest rate. On the flip side, if interest rates go up though, if you accept the bid on January 23rd, you're locked in for the whole 20 years. So you'd be locked in. If rates go up, you can continue just to pay it back over 20 years just as it is. But if rates go down after year 8, you could, if you had cash accumulated, you could pay it off or you could refinance. That would be at the city's option. Okay. Finally, in between the sale date of proposed sale date of January 23rd and today, we would be updating the city's bond rating. You have a very good AA3 rating right now. AAA is the best, AA1, AA2, then AA3. So we'll be renewing that. The better the rating, the lower the interest rates that you can get. And we'll also be putting together what we call the official statement, which is the document that gets sent out to potential buyers of the bonds, both in the area as well as nationwide. And then they're offered the opportunity to put a bid in on the January 23rd, the morning of January 23rd. Okay. So with that, I thank you for bearing with me. A lot of material to cover, but I'd open it up, Mayor, to any questions that you or the council might have.
Any concerns with Moody's recent thing that they came out with regarding the high inflation, and they have rising interest rates that weaken covered bond asset performance in 2023?
Yeah, we're always watching, no question about that. I think for Prescott specifically, your growth and value, your very strong financial performance in recent years, and your strong fund balance or savings, cash savings that the city has, are all really strong credit strengths. And your demographics as a community, your people have done well. They're relatively high on the comparable median income scales for the surrounding area. Those all factors in your place. I'd be surprised to see any downward pressure on the rating, but some of the macro issues that you're talking about are certainly affecting the broader economy and making interest rates a little unstable right now. They have been trending gradually down a little bit from a month or two ago, but we're something to keep watching. That's kind of why we had that 50 basis point spread, not knowing what might occur over the next month before we could do the sale.
I had a concern about the plan that you've come up with the city to basically take $800,000 and apply it to existing debt. And I believe that if we approve that plan, that it will create a situation where this body, the council, will be forced in some ways to separate wants from needs and be a little more conservative in future approaches to unforeseen debt issues or costs, shall we say. And I'm not certain if I read that right, so maybe if Matt could or you could explain that situation. Are we locking ourselves into a certain level? It's from what I read, it says we're locking ourselves into a certain threshold of percentage.
Yeah, maybe I can start and Matt can jump in as well. So whenever you use cash that the city has accumulated, a couple things that we discussed were what type of projects would you use the cash for, or would it be used to pay back debt? Sometimes you're using it to pay for a project. We certainly would never encourage you to use cash to pay for ongoing expenses because you're going to end up in a hole eventually. But capital projects or repaying debt certainly are valid uses of cash. But the other question is, if we use the cash, what's the right amount to use? And how much do we need to keep in reserve to deal with other issues that the city might have? And those issues could be other projects. They could be just the cash flow of the city from month to month and making sure you always are in a liquid position, so you don't have to do short-term borrowing or anything like that. And then finally, the other area is on your bond rating. One of the key factors to the bond rating, the question that was just brought up, is your cash situation. How much cash do you have? And what we were discussing in the case of Prescott is that you've been managing things very well, have accumulated a strong amount of cash, and we believe you're at the point, and I think staff is as well, that you have more than what the requirement to maintain the very good bond rating you have, and more than the level to worry about for being liquid to deal with cash flow throughout the year, and that you would be in a position to also have some cash to potentially use on future projects down the way as well, but obviously not as much if we use I think it's around 800 now to pay back the debt. But overall, we didn't, in the discussion is, if we were to make this step now and use that, the feeling was you're not putting that rating at risk, you're not putting your month-to-month cash flow at risk. And then it was a question is, do we put it toward projects, do we do it to pay back debt? What was the best option there? And in looking at trying to have a goal of keeping the total debt levy, both old debt and new debt, approximately at the same level, the approach of using it to pay the debt seemed to be the best fit. That was kind of the background of the thinking on it. But Matt, I don't know if there's anything else you'd add to that.
Yeah, I would just add that, when it came down to us putting together the capital improvement plan and looking from 2023 to 2030 and the projects that we wanted to do based on staff's input, working with Mike, talking with Sean, working with Greg Adams and our Cedar Corporation, we took the totality of those projects and we tried to figure out what we could manage and take on within those roles. And as you are all aware of, there are a number of projects that ultimately, we still had to cut that couldn't make it. But in working with Sean and seeing our overall cash balance and trying to minimize the impact of the tax levy in terms of future debt, what we ended up talking about was, well, if you're in between the 60 to 75% of operating or expenditures each year in reserve debt or reserve cash flow, sitting on hand. You put yourself in a good spot for future borrowings and your credit rating, but also you put yourself in a good spot for ultimately trying to keep your debt service and your levy down to pay for that.
Isn't, this is in the general fund balance policy memo that you gave us. And I was thinking in putting it into sort of a non-economic terms, isn't this about how much we should have in a savings for cash flow? Is that a good way to explain it? And we have so much now, we can afford to put 80,000 towards the debt right now.
Yes, so that's what we discuss ultimately, is that in working with Ellers, that these credit ratings and when we go out for borrowing, that they like to see 60 to 75% in reserves sitting there in case of an emergency, that you won't have any issues with default on paying those debt payments. So keeping that balance in place, and ultimately what the balance currently is that we have allows us for a potential of 800,000 in current debt that we could take on to minimize our debt service amounts moving forward, or the raise as a result.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good way of putting it, is finding the right amount to keep in reserve to manage the finances of the city effectively, long-term, and then that extra amount, what's the best way to use those funds to put them to work best for the city. And the goals were getting the projects done on the CIP, but also managing the tax levy to not have it, hopefully not have to spike up with the new projects that the city would be
Right.
taking on. Is kind of trying to find that balance there.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Shelley. All right, we have a resolution 4322 for the initial resolution, City of Prescott, relating to the issuance of general obligation bond not to exceed $4,730,000. I need a motion for that, please.
Motion to accept, oh, here it is. Resolution number, I can't find the number,
4322.
4322. Related to the issuance of general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $4,730,000 for the city's 2023-24 street improvement program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Now I need a roll call. Tom?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Bailey?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the general fund balance policy. Matt, you want to take that?
Yes, so similar to what we just discussed in coming up with really the capital improvement plan, and specifically looking at Locust Street and Elm Washington Street reconstruction over the next 2 years, we are trying to minimize the levy or the levy impact as a result of debt being taken on in that debt service. So trying to come up with what sort of balance should we make sure that we maintain within our reserves, so it's a healthy amount to keep our credit rating strong, but also give an opportunity so that we're not looking at having to raise the levy to the maximum extent as a result of taking on this new debt. So in discussing this with Ellers, one of the policies that they have recommended that we take on that is both good for those companies and the lenders that are taking on these bonds or issuing these bonds, that is a general fund balance policy that is in the 60 to 75% range. So as of our last audit, the city currently has a general fund balance of about 3.2 million. About 168 of that is either assigned or unspendable. So that leaves about 3.1 million remaining in balance. With expenses of our last audit at 2.89 million, that would put our 75% requirement at just over $2 million. So that would leave a remainder of $931,000 within our unassigned fund balance that could be used either for capital projects, transfer to funds for projects, or as we have discussed, putting it towards the current debt that we have on in terms of a early payoff to again minimize the future debt service that we would take on as part of our levy. So with that, those recommendations and discussions that we had with Ellers, that we wanted to bring this before council for a formal policy adoption that the city of Prescott takes on moving forward.
I appreciate you putting the time into that regarding the levy, so we don't have to
Yeah.
continually raise that. That was a huge concern. Need a motion, I'm assuming, on the policy? I'll make the motion.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and second to adopt the fund balance policy. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to say that without this, my vote in the previous item would have been very different. I would have voted no without this inclusion. It put it over the top for me. So thank you guys for thinking of this and moving forward with it. But like I say, it's going to force us to know the difference between wants and needs moving into the future.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any other discussion?
I think this has always been so vague previously, and we've always looked at this floating line above the debt seal, and some people call it the debt ceiling previously, and I was like, well, it didn't occur to me that we needed a policy. I think this really gives us some really good guidelines for how to judge future debt that we might assume, and also how we pay for the capital projects. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
I keep going back to seeing this in the part of the original breakout of repaying this. The cost for the job right now is $4.7 million, and we're going to pay $2.6 million in interest. And I have no idea, but something I'm going to be asking Matt about it to learn or whatever of what we can do in the future to, wherever possible, be more cash forward and less borrowing forward in the way that we operate, with the idea that as we work cash forward, we're not paying interest on stuff. And we all know, I mean, imagine what we could do with, $1 million of that 1.6. It'll take us time, and I have no idea if it's even possible, the way this system works. But to start setting ourselves up with the idea that we put money in the bank where we can smartly, it just kills me to see we're paying over $2.5 million on a $4.7 million project that somebody else has taken just for loaning us some money. That's it.
I guess the only thing I could respond to that is that borrowing is not, if you own a home and you borrow, it's not, as a homeowner myself, it's not fun to see, especially in those first 10 years, the interest that you're paying versus the principal. The flip side is if we tried to take on the money and build up the reserves to pay everything for cash, I think if you could hit the reset button and do it from the beginning, maybe that's a legitimate option, but the fact of the matter, this is similar to what we had a discussion with the fire association.
Right.
To try to build up a reserve, you're going to have to raise levy or you're going to have to cut elsewhere. So that means either we're not buying public works trucks and police trucks, or we're raising the levy to try to build up a cash balance to.
Or you find a way to generate revenue.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key issue is what are the alternatives? And you have to generate revenue.
From tourism.
Yeah, we want more.
That's a serious statement on my behalf, like, absolutely. I mean, from tourism, I'm not trying to add additional costs to our already high-paying taxpayers here. Anyways,
Okay, made a roll call on this, Tom,
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Bailey?
Aye.
Okay, motion approved, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a Winterfest special event application and temporary liquor license for the Chamber of Commerce.
I will turn it over to the tourism committee. I don't know who,
Yep, that'd be fine.
Thank you.
So I'm Casey Johnson with the Prescott Chamber of Commerce. We, as part of with the Tourism Committee, are requesting to put on an event. It's January 14th. It's a Saturday. There's a variety of activities that day for the sole purpose of trying to bring in overnight traffic, overnight tourists. Again, we've got multiple of the tourism committee members here to sort of, everybody has a different role in the event that day. There will be some asks and some support that we would need from the city. I don't know if you guys have specific questions about the request and the potential event, or?
What do you need from us?
That's a great question. I mean, I guess this is part of, so Muddy Waters is going to sponsor a beer tent in the back behind their building there. We have asked that Front Street be blocked off just from that side of Front Street behind Muddy's to front. We have fencing for it, but again, would be nice to have help from the city to actually put up the orange fencing, I think. Mitch has security. We've got wristbands. It will be a 21 over and under that, but again, wristbanded and ID'd. Kimberly's going to be doing sponsoring the ice sculpting contest. So we've got roped off areas throughout the downtown part. So again, for safety purposes, that people can't get too close as they're chopping up ice. So I don't know if that would require extra policing. We're not 100% sure. Again, this is sort of from the mandate from the businesses that are saying November to March is our focus of like drawing more tourism into Prescott. You know, they don't really need the help during the summer and spring months. So unclear how many people we really would expect this first year to participate. So I don't know that we would need, if we need increased police presence, or again, there won't be a ton of people. I mean, they'll be walking downtown in that part. Depending on the ice rink, we're hoping to maybe do a boot hockey tournament. So if that gets placed on the other side of the riverfront there at the condos, then maybe there would be more foot traffic. But again, all down on Front Street. Maybe a precursor to Prescott Days, we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you've got security handled, we've got the roping off from those that could be,
There'll be
you know.
stanchions around all the ice covers.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll be in
Could you
charge
come
of
up here,
cleaning
please?
up.
Nope, Kimberly.
Would you come up to the podium, please? That way everybody at home can hear you. Thank you.
All of the ice carvers they'll be stanchioned off with a tent over the top of them. They'll use their tools. This is literally a mini St. Paul Winter Carnival. These are professional ice carvers from the area, and it was my idea because we have so much talent in the area. And so I've pulled in all of my contacts, and they'll be doing it. They'll be in charge of cleaning up after themselves. There will be nothing left. There'll be no debris. We will take everything down by 8 p.m. because we'll have it all set up by 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. in the morning. They'll carve from 11 to 4. We're going to clean it up, and it'll be out. We're going to announce the winner at 6 p.m. And that's that. So we're literally trying to recreate something that that I've witnessed and experienced in St. Paul, and just trying to bring it a little bit further south, because they're from Ellsworth and Hastings and my chef, and it just goes on and on. So that's what we're trying to do. That's my portion.
About the ice rink.
Thank you.
I was wondering why I was hearing noise on
So we,
Prescott word of mouth about me creating a new ice rink when we already have one.
so we have a temporary or a movable portable ice rink, and I
Okay.
guess we've
That's what
got,
I was wondering. I was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I don't remember,
Yeah,
I guess
so.
I wasn't here, I don't know what year it was actually purchased, but the biggest issue we have with ice, and I was just talking to Casey about this, is that we just need it to stay below freezing for an
I saw
extended
that we
period.
poured the one, and I'm sure it's gone now.
Yeah, I talked to Mike today, and we actually were doing a lot of testing at well 3, so we ended up flooding it again, and permeates in, and we were trying to get that ground to freeze, and as soon as it freezes, then we can start building it up and building onto that.
Looks like next week.
Unfortunately, we don't have the equipment to make it,
If it stays.
I know some people would love to see an ice rink style where it's just perfectly clear and does, but that's, right now, we do not have that kind of equipment to make.
I thought, isn't there an ice sheet that you can rent that isn't ice?
It's not, I played hockey, they're not the best. They use them for training kids and stuff like that,
Yeah.
at, like training
Yeah.
facilities, yeah. Yeah. If we have a movable one, that's fine.
It is, well, it is, but also the kids use it, after, because if we're taking it from up in the neighborhoods and we're putting it down there, we want to make sure that the kids can come down and utilize it.
We won't be taking the one from up there and bringing it down, because we're not using the temporary stuff up there, are we?
So the one at Lynn Road or Lynn Street, will still be there, that will be
Oh,
our
yeah.
official.
Okay, I was
permanent.
unaware.
But the portable one we didn't have out last year, apparently it went up, I think, one time at, St. Croix Bluffs Park.
Yeah.
And we had some issues with people trying to take things and break apart the ice, and it became an ongoing issue of trying to repair it, so.
So is this gonna go on that open grass that we got down there? That open
Right in the
section?
parking
It's on
lot,
the
isn't it?
pavement.
Parking lot.
Yeah, I thought
The
it was
idea
on
would
the
be
parking lot.
Markard Mill
Yeah.
parking lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Never mind.
It has boards to it though, sides?
Okay,
The boater parking lot.
I don't think so, Casey.
The boater.
sure.
On a positive note, the ice carvings will still be there as long as nobody destroys them, and then the city can enjoy them. So, we're starting
So you'll-
small.
That's the plan, yeah, to leave them.
Yep, there's
And
gonna,
there's spots that we, on the,
yep. One in front of the chamber, one in front of the Port of Prescott, one in front of Papa Tronio's and the Twisted Oak, one in front of me, and then we were looking at one another location back behind where the tent will be. So it'll be a nice walkabout. It'll be something, visually interesting for the city and the community to enjoy.
Pray for cold weather.
yeah, I think instead of, one of the or edits maybe to the permit was not doing like a live band, but Muddy Waters would host a DJ. So there still would be music and amplification, but, okay, well, you gotta come over here. And again, I don't think the idea is to let people roam free with beverages. I mean, again, staying on that cordoned off area with the wristbands, so.
Yeah, so
It's 10 to 8, right?
we'll have wristbands. They'll
I
be
think we're
green
saying
and
11
red.
to 8 is what the.
The red will be under 21, green will be over 21. We'll have people working I'm probably gonna have two openings, one that's on the street so cars can still park behind there because there's some residents that live back there. And then the other one being kind of by where that lookout is, the new lookout that you guys just put in. Because that's another idea of where we're actually gonna have another carving station. So for people to come in and out would be much nicer. But we're gonna have a DJ from 11 a.m. till 8. I don't think that will have any problem with like noise ordinances or anything like that, right? I mean, 8 p.m. And then also, and I think I already have something pulled, don't I, for live music out there? I don't know if it applies to winter, but this is a first. But we will have live music. It'll just be like an acoustic, couple hours. I haven't decided exact time yet, but can't really supply a band for 9 hours straight, especially depending on how cold it is. So, but we're gonna do at least about an hour or two. There will be, this is the one thing I do have a question on, that we will have a fire pit down there in the cul-de-sac. It will be manned by somebody the whole entire event. He has done it before. There is a grating that's over the top of it, keep people from falling into it. He does it for the Hastings, any event that they've had down there, the hoopla or street dance or any gobblegate sometimes, same guy. So it's a buddy of mine, so he's gonna come over and man that, so that'll be taken care of. And it's not gonna be just people roaming around with beers.
Food's available.
Yeah, we're gonna have food out there. We're gonna have hot chocolate. We're gonna have other things. We're talking a little bit about having an area that's a little more kid-friendly, kind of right in the entrance, kind of right at the corner of the old Geisner Inc. building. So, I mean, we're gonna try to keep it family-friendly as much as possible. If anybody becomes unruly or anything like that, I mean, we'll just escort them out. And if it becomes a real big problem, well, yeah,
That's what I'm here for.
yeah.
We did a fire pit with the Clear River Trail stuff, so I don't see why that would be an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just asked that, like
To be covered.
Mitch said, that it's either covered and as long as it's not placed directly on the ground.
It's not, no, it's definitely off the ground. Yeah.
Because it was in my fire pit, it was not.
As
covered.
far as the alcohol, are you guys gonna fence off the area for alcohol and not let them out of that?
Yes,
So they won't be able to carry up to look at all the sculptures and things like that?
no.
No, they need to go purchase from Lucille's at that point.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanna make sure I'm covering all my
We will
angles.
we'll stop anybody that tries to walk out of the snow
The
gate,
tent,
with
yeah.
a snow fencing
So to
area.
be set up kinda like Prescott Days out on the street dance then?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
alright. And just so you know, the 45-day outlook says 14 degrees on that day, so.
okay.
That's not bad.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that last part was Casey kind of talked about a little bit, was just help getting the fencing set up. I mean, obviously I could get a crew of guys and we can figure it out, but it'd be kind of weird for us to purchase fencing for one event. That'd be,
Do we have fencing? Mike has.
Yeah, and we asked at the
fencing.
picnic table. I think the chamber, I found a spool of it in the basement, so I don't know how much that is though, so we'll have to double check that, but if there is extra from Prescott Days, and then maybe help moving some of the picnic benches to that area, so if we do the s'mores and for people to sit.
Does Mike have the fencing or does
That's what I was
the
wondering.
chamber have it from Prescott
There
Days?
was
for
some
the-
around at St. Croix Bluffs around the.
We have snow fencing, the orange fencing that you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what,
perfect.
there's a roll of it in the basement here too, but I don't know where that came from or how
how many feet?
many feet it is.
And I can get you whomever needs it, I can get the numbers of how many feet we need. So we can look at that. I mean, it doesn't need to be like all the way up to the liquor store or anything like that. I mean, within reason. It'd be nice if it got past the point of where the lookout is, you know, between the road and kind of the new lights and everything there, not putting it like on top of anything brand new there. But just to make sure that we have a good area.
Between that and
But,
barricades, probably, a mixture
yeah.
of.
Would there be an entrance fee? So if you're coming in with the kids, you just come in and we could buy hot chocolate and do stuff like that or whatever?
Yeah, no entrance fee, we just are gonna ask to card people,
Yeah.
you know, that are intending to
gotta-
drink.
Yep.
Right, and if you don't have a wristband and you go up to try to get a beer, we're gonna card you again. Yeah, but it's just an easier way for our guys just to look real quick and be able to pour a beer, so.
No issues.
Yeah, I just want to add that the other thing is that I think there's we were talking to Freedom Park to see if they want to add anything to this. So it's again, not just the tourism committee, but anybody in town that day. And I also know that the high school parent group had mentioned maybe doing something as well. And I think originally we were saying maybe a movie, but we've asked that they maybe try to keep it downtown so that everybody can stay in that area. So again, the idea that, you know, letting other groups participate and highlight whatever they've got going on that day too. So the more activities, the more reason for people to come this year and then hear about it, hopefully be back next year, that kind of thing,
Maybe we
so.
could actually get the gear house open. That's always locked. Just saying. Anyways, I'll shut up now. I make a motion to approve the Winterfest special event application and temporary liquor license for the Chamber of Commerce.
A second. Got a motion and a second to approve the temporary retailer's license. Any discussion on the motion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the council committee assignments for 2023 schedule. Since we've reduced our committees to 4, like finance stays with all members, and then publics and parks and public works, Bailey, Pat, and John. Health and safety's Dar, Tom, and Marine. Personnel's Marine, Dar, and Bailey. And then your other assignments will stay the same, library board, planning commission, etc. That'll continue until April, when we have the the general election, and then we'll see about doing reassignments, but that'll stay in existence until then. Any questions?
There's one missing in the, which is the position I fulfill on the fire commission
No, that'll continue to do that until April.
until April,
Yeah.
correct.
Not
It's just
Yeah,
not.
the library and all
Yeah.
that'll stay on there. Any other questions on that? Matt, is that covered okay?
The only thing, the 23 schedule, I'll send out just calendar reminders for everybody so that they have them. I'm not sure if anybody uses online calendars, but just in case, I'll send those over.
Okay, we don't have any closed session. Is there any other business?
Just a reminder that if you are interested in running for a council seat, those paperwork are due by 4:30 on January 3rd for wards 3 and 4, and if you are unsure what ward you are, you can find it on the Prescott website.
Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.